Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I have a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today's episode 195 of Podcast 2 for 1. YouTube.com/2 for 1 Studios is the best place to consume all the content. And if you didn't know, listeners, and let's be honest, you probably did not, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas, that have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Kapow. Daniel, it's 195. We're talking your favorite Netflix show of all time, Avatar: The Last Airbender. A little bit of backstory, listeners. We did do an Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast X amount of years ago, and this is one of the few podcasts where Daniel watched something and I did not watch it.
Yes, I think it was like a "What have you been watching?" I think episode.
I don't know. I think we just maybe, but I mean it's a full episode just dedicated to your thoughts on the cartoon version of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay.
I've only seen like the first 1 or 2 episodes. I did really enjoy what I watched. I just life got in the way and I haven't gotten back to it yet. And so now we're here at Netflix 2024, and we have both watched both seasons, or the full 8 episodes of this first season here. Mm-hmm. And normally, Daniel, I ask for your thoughts first, but because I don't have that tie, I'm going to tell you what I think about it first.
Go ahead.
So overall, I did enjoy it. I think on like visually, it kind of looks like the show or the cartoon. I think it feels like they're kind of translating a cartoon to live action in a lot of ways, and some of even the dialogue that kind of works for a cartoon that doesn't really work for live action, and you can kind of get away with certain things in a cartoon. And I ultimately feel like I would be pulled in, and then for like a good half of episode, I'd be out of it. And so, but that whole season, it was kind of like I'd be in it, and then I'd kind of get out of it, and then I'd be in it, and I'd kind of get out of it. And I feel like there's just a lot of liberty maybe sometimes in cartoons that you get away with when you don't with live action for whatever reason. That's an interesting thing. And I don't know this, it feels like they kind of condensed a lot of stuff into this first season. And I feel like I needed more, not build up, but I needed things fleshed out and kind of some of the universe stuff. But the universe stuff I was getting, I was like, this is kind of fascinating. I just kind of feel like, I don't know, example, like the moon situation at the end of season 1. I was kind of like, this is really cool. I can't believe we're actually turning off the moon. That's a pretty cool idea. I want to go watch the cartoon now. I kind of wish we had set that up a couple episodes earlier instead of getting all the moon information in this episode now. So anyway, that's kind of my ultimate feelings about it. When it ended, I was in a state of, oh man, I kind of want to see what happens next. But I always wasn't feeling that way watching the whole season.
Yeah. I mean, so I completely agree with you. I think just to go back to what you were saying, you can't translate a cartoon 1-to-1 to live action. It doesn't work. It's not. They're two different mediums. It's like trying to translate a book to a movie 1-to-1. It doesn't work. There are things that the medium provides as a book that you can't do in a movie. We can't hear characters' internal thoughts. Well, maybe a voiceover, but like there's certain things that books do that you can't do in movies. There's certain things that cartoons do, or maybe you could say get away with, that you can't in film. And I think this is absolutely in terms of the characters. I mean, the characters are 1-to-1 exactly what they look like in the cartoon. The plot, you're right, is highly compressed. Like, I mean, like there was that middle episode, the Boomy episode in like Omashu. That episode or 2-episode arc or whatever that was contained like 5 or 6 storylines that were all their own episodes in the cartoon that did not take place in Omashu. Like Jet, the guy with the twig in his mouth, that happened. They saw him way before they ever got to Omashu. That was a whole other plot.
Question. I'm pretty sure like episode 2 is Omashu. That's the place
episode
where
2 was Kyoshi.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. Is Omashu the place where the Earthbenders are?
The Earthbender city.
Yeah. Is his the old man is his friend?
Yeah.
Is who's that? What's his name?
Boomy.
I could have swore he was in episode 2. I think it's as far as I got, because I was like, oh, this is already maybe
Oh no,
And
no, no!
so
He
two-
doesn't show up until like midway through season 1. Like Omashu is like the mid-season climax, and then like the water people stuff is like the end of season climax. Is how it works. Kind of.
How
in the
many
cartoon.
episodes are in season 1 of the
I think
cartoon? Do
20.
you know?
I think 20. So
mean,
less
I mean-
runtime. Less runtime.
Yeah.
I mean, the
That's
TV
fascinating.
show is over 8 hours. The cartoon's under 7. You know, like 6.5 or less.
How is that even possible? Then is it because it feels like they're kind of like in certain moments they're, like here's the thing too, like when there's a lot of like here's important lesson moments, or here's like supposed to be like a really spine tingling moment, and it feels like those are just not handled as well as here's my ego as I would have potentially handled them.
No, absolutely. Well, again, to me, the problem of the show is they try to adapt it 1-to-1. Here's a great example. The dialogue, like you mentioned, that's exactly right. There's so many lines that you're like, that was a line in the show, but that does not play naturally in this. That just feels ham-fisted. I don't know if it's the directing. I honestly blame more of the directing than the acting for this show, just because I feel like widespread the acting I just mostly did not gel with any of them. Like none of it felt natural. None of it felt real. It felt like a fairy tale. It felt like a fairy tale world. Well, it's not just the dialogue. Okay, the costumes, they're 1-to-1 perfect, but they are the cleanest motherfucking costumes I've ever seen in a show ever. It doesn't look like anyone's worn those for years in a tribe. It doesn't look like they've gone through battles and like that's an example of like why you say, oh, well,
which is like a cartoon,
the cartoons,
right?
It's colorful and bright. And here's the thing, the cartoon animation was fairly cheap. They did not have a big budget. They were constantly threatened to get canceled by Nickelodeon the whole time they were making that original show. So like it's cheaper animation because that's the budget they had. And so when you have that, it makes you make different stylistic choices, right? Like how you're going to portray certain things, but you can't. It's like the show is like, well, they did it like that, so we're gonna do it like that. But we're like, that was a limitation of the medium. Why would you limit yourself in this medium that doesn't have that inherently with something that the old one did just because that's what they had to do? And it's like this idea that nostalgia trumps all. We have to be nostalgic. We have to make the fans happy. They don't want a new take on the story. They just want what they had in a different format. And to a degree, the viewing numbers might back that up, which is upsetting. But like, it's just,
I didn't expect you to be this fired up about it.
I am, because here's the thing. Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon, I think is one of the best told stories in animation ever. I just think it's perfect. It's 3 seasons. They're perfect. Like there's maybe 2 filler episodes in the whole show of like 60 episodes. You know what I mean? And like they just, I love the heart of the show. I love the messages it does. I love the way it develops the characters. Zuko, which, we'll see what they do with him in the next 2 seasons. He's one of my favorite characters for how they develop him over the show. He's amazing. He's so cool. And so like, I'm very attached to the show. I've watched it 2 or 3 times. My wife most recently watched it through with my wife. It's one of her favorite shows of all time as well, now. And so I think it's upsetting to me because, for one, it's just, I won't say it's a low effort adaptation, because there's obviously a lot of money here and they obviously spend a lot of time trying to do it. It lacks what is the word I'm looking for? Ingenuity, maybe, or it lacks guts. It didn't take any risks. It takes 0 risk. In fact, it took risks out of the show. For example, Sokka's character, he is notoriously like sexist the first season. He is constantly on about how men can do it better than women, how you're just a girl, let the man do it, like all these things. And then the show like basically works that out of him, partly through meeting like Kyoshi, the Kyoshi warriors. And like in the show, he ends up dressing up in drag, essentially like as one of them in makeup and everything. And it's this really interesting moment where he's like, I'm the man, but I'm being taught by warrior women and they're better at me than everything. And like that's good character growth, right? Sokka's not sexist in this. He's just Sokka. He's just the joke factory. And it's like,
100%.
I get that, but like you've taken everything that's interesting about that character. Another great example, Aang, right? So in the show, when it's in the past, before he gets frozen, he leaves to go clear his head, right? And then he gets trapped in the storm. In the show, he runs away. He says, I don't want to be the Avatar. I'm running away. And that is so much better. And then he wakes up after he's been frozen, like, because I ran away, everyone I know is dead. And like the weight of that on his character that goes through it's so good. It's like that's like crushing. Like how I couldn't deal with that. You know, like you had a moment of weakness as a kid, it overwhelmed by some sense of duty that was thrust upon you that you never asked for, and in a moment of weakness and panic, you just run away, and because of that, everything's different now. You know what I mean? And like that is such a more interesting version of his character than like.
They do. I mean, I feel like all season long it is very much a I wasn't there.
Yes, but it's not it's more of a I wasn't there, but I mean, you're just going to clear your head and you got caught in a storm. It's not really your fault, right? I mean, like I feel like they were trying to act like it, but they didn't back it up with the actual backstory that made that make sense. So even to your point, it's like, it's because I wasn't there. It's like, why are you beating yourself up for like random circumstances that made you end up here versus like, oh, you made a decision, you made a choice, and that is somewhat a reason why we're here. So it's just I get you. Examples like that where it's just like, or even Katara in the show is like the mother of the group. In fact, there's a line from Sokka that he says in the show. It's beautiful. He's talking about their dead mother, right? She gets burned by the Fire Nation, and he talks about how he has a hard time remembering his mom, her face, because it's been so long. And in fact, he just thinks about Katara. Katara's the mom, has been the mom in their village. Katara's been the mom in their life. And she's super strong and like assertive like that in the cartoon. And like she's a really strong, powerful woman character that like when she gets told she can't waterbend by the people in the Northern Temple, she's like, I'm doing it. Like she gets trained by Aang anyway. Like, it's just like, to me, this Katara, she felt like a little girl in this show. She felt like a little girl, and maybe to a degree,
she does.
You know, that's realistic, I guess.
I didn't buy her master turn at the end, really.
No.
Her abilities definitely showcase she's a master all of a sudden, but I didn't buy that she was.
They did not earn it. They did not earn it at all.
I didn't earn that. I didn't get that
in the show. Like she is learning. They're both learning waterbending the whole first season. And so by the time you get to the end, it's like, yeah, they've been practicing for 20 episodes. It makes sense they're good now. You know what I mean? Like even that line where like Zuko, like she's fighting Zuko and he's like, well, you found a master, didn't you? Like that makes so much more impact when we have fought Zuko maybe 10 times this season and he always keeps whooping their ass. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like that's not been the reality. They've bet Zuko like one time in the season before that. You know what I mean? And it's like it's just things like that where it's like, guys, like what ultimately bothers me about it is if someone wants to make a 1-to-1 show, fine. Listen, I watched it. I'm probably going to watch the next 2 seasons unless it just kills me and I can't, it's like hurting my eyes or my ears or my heart. But the problem I have with it is that this now takes the place of what could have been a meaningful adaptation of Avatar. What Avatar needs is like an MCU budget. What Avatar needs is or a Dune budget. It needs to have the budget to tell an epic tale over like 2 or 3 movies, and it needs to be done. You need to adapt it. You need to say, okay, Aang is like this in the cartoon. How can we make him still have like an homage to that, but bring him into the real world? Bring him into a world that feels more grounded, that feels more like our reality, so we can connect better to these characters. That doesn't exist in the TV show. This world doesn't feel like ours. None of these things feel real. Like I like the casting, but like so much of them they just feel plastic. Like Ozai, Daniel Day Kim, love Daniel Day Kim, Lost alumni. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he's just so wooden. He's so wooden. Well,
he feels like there's some moments where I'm like, oh, there you go. There's some acting, and other parts I'm like. Yes, I don't think it's. I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I think it's the directing and mainly the dialogue. I think it's the dialogue.
Zhao's and I think it's both. But yeah, I think Commander Zhao, who is Ken Leung,
love him.
Yeah, which is also a Lost alum. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And but I didn't recognize him at first because they did really good. Like I just was like, I didn't recognize him with the hairdo, I guess. But like so much of his lines that are pulled directly from the show just do not come off right.
I think he got away the least unscathed because he's kind of playing the emperor kind of.
Sure, he's devious. He's a POS kind of guy.
Yeah, I think he got. I think out of everybody, he is the least. Like I watched him, I'm like, okay, I don't know how this cartoon show is, but he gets to be restrained and very stern, and like it
he's
that kind of works for him.
Subtle in the cartoon. He's more subtle. He's less obviously a dick or obviously the bad guy in every situation. You know what I mean?
I still think that if I had to pick one character to stay the same in like an adaptation, I'd probably pick him because again, I think he's at least if I had to pick one,
I would say
unscathed.
To me, Zuko did pretty good with what he had. His acting was the most natural to me most of the time.
Really, he seemed like everything to me felt like a cartoon where it was just kind of like.
But it's even like it's not even as. But the problem is, it's exactly like the cartoon, but without the core of what made the cartoon great, which was amazing character development and really thoughtful writing. Another example, Iroh, Uncle Iroh. Literally one of the best characters in the Avatar cartoon universe there's ever existed. He is so fucking cool. And it's so cool because he's a war criminal. He's like this old dude that like killed thousands and thousands of people and failed and then had to like come back. But like even like the story of his son dying, right? That is they handle that in this really like quaint part of an episode, and they don't really touch on it anymore because like they're just giving you little drips of it. It's like here's a little like when you meet Uncle Iroh, he's this wise sage like guy. He's all kind of he's like Buddhist compared to like Zuko's like just punch everything, right? He's like let's just let's patience and chill, drink my tea. But then he's also a fucking badass when he needs to be. Like he like turns it on. And to me, this Iroh, he felt like a genie in a lamp. Or something like that. Every line to me was just delivered 100%. At this like, ho, ho, ho. You know what I mean? I was like,
yes,
this is not Iroh. For one, I thought he was too young. I think he should have been older. But like, it's just those are the examples of just like, God damn it. What I'm ultimately upset is that Netflix will learn the wrong lessons from this. Absolutely. They're like, well, how many viewers we had in the first week? 20 million or whatever the fuck. Obviously, this is what they want. And then we're just going to get more adaptations like this.
I think part of it is, I don't know because this is one of those kind of shows where, they know like this is a beloved show. No, they do. They I don't know if they know.
Okay, when I read an interview with the showrunner, they were like, we knew the critics would be whatever, but man, the fans have been so positive. And I was like,
yeah, no, to be fair, I haven't. Sorry, let me back up.
Which fans are you listening to? Because
let me back up. I haven't seen any post show release comments. I'm just saying, like, I think they know while they're making it that this needs to be, it needs to be like good, right?
It's a core part of a lot of people's childhood in a similar way that Spider-Man has been for previous generations and stuff.
Yeah, and they had, I think, the people who made the cartoon on board, I think.
No, yeah, they were at first and then they left. Yeah.
And they left.
Creative differences.
Which is, to me, a pretty alarming sign because it's like,
absolutely.
The people who made this a beloved show, why don't you agree with them? I don't understand that.
And to me, I mean... Yeah, I completely agree. Now, here's the hopeful part. Those guys now have their own Avatar studio and are just making their own shit now. We're getting a movie in 2025 that is a follow-up to the TV show, the first TV show. That is them in their like 30s. Situation.
That's so interesting that
they're planning another new TV show. So we've had Avatar: The Last Airbender, we've had Korra, The Legend of Korra, which is like takes place almost like a century later, and then they're working on another one that takes place even later, and so like we're getting more of the core Avatar just like timeline story. We're getting animated movies that follow up on the TV show everyone loves, because that was one thing. They made Avatar: The Last Airbender, then they made Korra, but because it's 100 years later, there's only a couple characters still alive from the original TV show, you know what I mean? So people were like, it's really good, and it does some really interesting things with the world building. Like Korra does it really gets deep into lore and just like what's going on behind the scenes. But you're reacting to it and it was like, well, but I wanted Aang. I want to see what happens next with Aang and Sokka and Katara and Zuko and all these cool people. So we're now getting that from the actual guys that made it. And so and we're getting just more mainline Avatar content. You know what I mean? Wow. And so like, we're going to get the good stuff. Luckily. And just like I said, it's a shame, and it's a domino effect because we had a 2010 M. Night Shyamalan adaptation of this that was horrendous, and like
Man.
literally most of the fans, the joke is you pretend it doesn't exist. What movie? That's what the comments are.
I gotta tell you this story real quick.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
as a kid, like every week or whenever a movie come out,
Yeah.
or it don't matter. Every week, I like wanted to go buy a DVD on Tuesday.
Sure.
They come out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, but like, I mean, I was kind of a shit kid in the fact that like I was like, Dad, we've got to get the Incredible Hulk on Blu-ray. It came out on Tuesday. Please buy it for me.
Yeah.
And so like I was just like that was just like I don't know, my lifeline every week is like buying a
Sure.
movie on Tuesday.
Something you look forward to.
And
Yeah.
every week, yeah. And so when the movie come out, I didn't see it in theaters. But it was like coming out and I was like, I want to watch it because like just look at the trailer. It's like this big epic fantasy. There's like all this cool shit happening. It's like, Dad, we've got to buy it. We've got to get it. He bought it for me. And we watched it. I don't remember if I even finished it, but we watched it. And like now it's like one of those things where I don't throw away anything, like especially like movies.
Sure.
And every time I see it in my collection, I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I made him buy that. Every time.
Yeah, well,
I'm like,
and
I can't
when
believe.
you see, for its faults, for all its faults, the Netflix adaptation is trying to do a 1-to-1. So even watching this show, you're getting like an appetizer of what the real show is like. You can understand some of the tone of the show when you watch the Netflix show of the cartoon. And then when you look at Shyamalan's movie, it's like, what the fuck were you trying to do with that? You know what I mean?
I see the reaction of kind of like, hey, instead, because like which what he was doing, it's more in line on paper with what you're talking about of like trying to make a movie version of it.
But it felt like it wasn't trying to do the like.
I'm not arguing for the movie.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just saying like on paper, it's like there's someone who's trying to adapt it for a movie versus making something 1-to-1, right? And so
yes, I like the strategy. They just did it wrong.
Right. On paper, the strategy's right. It's so fucking bad that I can see the reaction of like, we have to make it 1-to-1 now if we ever do it again. I understand that. And I see I think that's kind of also contributing to where we're at today with the live action version. Absolutely. I will say this, when it comes to the actual bending, I thought it was pretty good. Like I was like the choreography, like especially the fire tribes, the Fire Nation, I love.
Yes.
Like people doing fucking martial arts and fire going everywhere. And
now
I was like, this is pretty cool.
One of the best parts of the show is the action and the bending. I will say like my favorite moment was the Kyoshi moment in episode 2, which is sad. I wish my favorite moment was at the end of the season, but like the best moment to me was when Avatar Kyoshi kind of took control of Aang and just like whooped ass on him.
Pretty cool.
Like it was awesome. Yeah. And it was good and it looked good, but it still wasn't as cool as the show, because in the show, each of the bending powers is actually based on a different type of martial arts. So like the fire is, I don't know what they are, but it's like ninjutsu and all these different kinds are based on. So like when you watch them in the show, they're doing very similar moves to whatever that art style is. So it feels even more unique. It's like when you watch Earthbenders bend, they're doing it so different than waterbenders. They're doing it so different than firebenders. They're doing it so different than airbenders, So it's but you're right though. The action was great. What's interesting is I was on Reddit about it, and like apparently the show finished shooting in like 2021, and then has been in post since. Like it's taken them 2 years to do this much CGI, which it makes sense. There's a lot of CGI, and it looks okay. Here I will say it looks mostly good, but then man, some of those faces they showed were bad. I think it was episode 1 when Aang was in the Avatar state and like it was at the air temple and he was like getting upset and it was like pushing in on his face and it was completely CGI and it was bad to me. It did not look good.
I guess I didn't really notice any faces. The thing I thought largely everything looked pretty good. I think there were some cases where I'm like, oh, it's a green screen. But it's not the green screen's fault. The way they shoot this, they shoot it like a TV show in some ways. Yeah. Sometimes you're like, oh, it looks like a really like it's typically the wide shots where like it's wide.
Yeah. Like a sweeping overhead, like watching the battles big. And
because it's wide, because everything's in focus, it feels like a movie almost for a second. Yes. But then there's a lot of times where it feels like the blocking, it's just like shot, reverse shot. Like we're on this person's face. They're in the middle of the frame. We're on this person's face.
Yes.
And one thing I fucking hate, everybody, like, please filmmakers stop doing this. don't do digital push-ins.
No.
Like I fucking hate them. You only can do them if you're David Fincher. So
Yeah.
and that's because his shots are so sterile and designed that way. A digital push-in works, and
Yeah.
they're so
Yeah.
subtle.
Yeah.
Don't fucking do them, especially when you have a green screen behind people.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I fucking hate them. I'll
Yes.
never do. I don't like them.
Yes.
I have done them, but again, I only do them when it's like it is like you don't even know, but it's just subconscious you do
Yeah.
it. People do
Yeah.
these digital push-ins for like heroic moments. I fucking hate it. And
Yeah.
so the other thing I also hate, and I criticize James Gunn about this on Guardians 3, and I'm right to do it. When you do a flashback sequence, don't fucking do a fwash. FWASH, a fwash, which is like it's like it goes white for a second. You hear the sound
It fades
effect.
out.
It's like we're in a flashback. We're back to real life.
Yeah.
We're in a flashback. Like at the very end when he's like hearing all the voices,
Yeah.
like his season 1 experiences, and are like, you have to protect people. You have to do this.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. I'm like,
By the way, none of that was necessary in the cartoon because they spent a good amount of time setting everything up that you just knew. You didn't need it. Like, and that's the thing is like, because they were compressing so much of this, they had to write bad dialogue. Okay, one of my favorite examples of the bad dialogue. So in the final episode, Princess Umi, I think that's her name. So that is true to the show. Like she was going to die as a child. They asked the moon spirit to heal her. The moon spirit healed her, and now she's got this connection to the spirit world. And then at the end, it is true, Zhao kills the moon spirit, and then basically she's giving back the part of the part of the moon spirit that healed her. She's giving back and becoming the moon spirit. She becomes the moon essentially. But and they do a masterful job of setting this up. And I feel like when they do it, you don't really see it coming but it's this really great, awesome moment of like her self-sacrifice and like all this stuff. But the way they set it up in the show, so the fish is dead, Aang is rampaging, as the water Godzilla, which was cool and very close to the show's depiction. Like
I didn't expect that. I thought that was like,
awesome.
it's like we're getting a kaiju moment. This is kind of wild.
It was awesome. And it looked really good. The CGI on it I thought looked great. But they're standing there and they're like, all hope is lost. And Sokka's like, I wish we could raise this fish from the dead. That would fix everything. And she's like, we're gonna raise the fish from the dead.
You're right.
I was just like, what? That was your first? Like, it just plays so unnatural. And
it
then,
does. Again, it's a cartoon.
Like they're setting, but even the cartoon did it better.
Well, I know, but I'm saying like, I know, but when I say that, I don't mean that. I mean
I
like
hear what you mean.
Yeah.
But it's like that kind of writing. We're like, well, we got to have this happen now. How do we set that up? Well, he'll just ask specifically about doing the thing that happens. It's just like,
yeah.
There is no subtlety. There is no subtext to the show, and I think that is actually like because we've removed these interesting character flaws. We've removed these flaws from people, right? Because even Katara, she's controlling in the show. That's one of her flaws. She tries to control everything, and like that doesn't exist here. But like it just feels like there's no subtext to this show. Everything you're seeing is on the surface, is told to you directly. Is like, I mean, even in episode 1, like Aang's like, I'm just a kid. I want to play games, not be the Avatar. And it's like that kind of stuff. Like, could we have been shown that? Could we have found a way to, not just look at the camera and say that, so it's just like when the original show, the subtext is like one of the richest in animation, like it's stories that I've seen. And then the show is just everything's on the surface. There is no depth. there is, nothing's going to be subtly earned. It's just all going to be in your face on the front. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
I get it.
I can rant forever.
I want to add one more nugget here. Like Nolan, I think I love Nolan's use of flashbacks because they just happen.
Yeah.
And and the thing is, like Nolan's a movie, right? 2 hours long, and so it's like. You should know. We just saw this probably 30 minutes ago, this scene or this shot, so we can reference it. I feel like in the show they're like, we're going to do the fwash and everything else because, just in case you forgot. But it's like Netflix is supposed to be it's binge TV.
Yes,
it treats the audience like they're not
We weren't
smart.
paying attention. Yes. And even that, is that like them trying? It just feels like, who did you make this show for? Did you make it for super
feels
fans?
It feels like for kids. It feels like for kids.
But then they said this isn't a show for kids. I mean, they literally show people being like burning alive and screaming. Like there is some dark parts that they show, and in the pre-press release they were like, we had to age it up. You know what I mean? We had to blah 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 blah. And I'm like, did you? Did you do that at all? Like it's weird because it's like, who's the target audience? Super fans don't like it. I mean, like there's a small vocal minority I've found on Reddit that like hyping it up, or it's honestly it's a lot of people being like, well, I never watched the cartoon, but I thought this was great. You know what I mean? And then everyone in like the mainline Reddits, they're just dragging it, and it's funny. They're memeing it, and it's well done. But it's like, so if that was your target audience, you categorically failed. The super fans, the people that like love it, are not connecting with it for the most part. I mean, you're drawing in a lot of numbers, so maybe you are getting a lot of people that have never watched it before, right? So maybe that's what they're actually pulling in. I mean, I think the thing is the super fans are still watching it because it's like the superhero movies on TV. It's like, this isn't good, but it's like an adaptation of one of my favorite pieces of media ever. So I gotta just kind of watch it, like,
I'm seeing Madam Web later today. In a couple hours. In a couple hours, baby. Madam Web.
Well, technically that isn't the MCU, but yeah. So you don't.
Well, you don't. Well,
I'm kidding,
whatever.
I'm kidding.
But you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. Like,
yeah, it's just
yeah. And I am going to hopefully cleanse my palate with Dune Part 2 right about an hour after.
That's good. That was a good decision. You don't want to sit through like a 3-hour epic of like masterpiece cinema and then go into Madam Web after.
That's the thing. Like, it'll be amazing if I come out of here saying today that Madam Web's better than Dune 2. Like I'd break someone's brain on the internet. Like it would be it's the best tagline we could put on a YouTube video. Like
I know.
I had something like I had a
why Madam Web is better than Dune 2.
Well, a clickbait would be like, I had a better experience with Madam Web than Dune Part 2. And my experience was like the projector shut down in Dune Part 2.
Or like they were just like asshole kids in Dune that were like throwing popcorn and stuff. It has nothing to do with the movies.
Exactly. The ultimate clickbait article. And there's two things I want to bring up, and we're going to have to get off here because this is a shorter podcast today probably. But one, everyone keeps saying this, and I'm going to check it out because I like Madam Web. And also I'm curious, are you going to pick up Halo Season 2?
I don't know, man. I have
everyone
no innate draw.
Much better. Yeah, everyone's saying it's much, much better.
But
what does that mean? I don't know.
Comparison to shit. Is it like so if the first season was a full plate of shit, this is only a half plate of shit? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? Like,
to be fair,
percentages.
I defended. I think you did too. There was like nuggets, and they were kind of like, "Oh, this is interesting."
Yeah, they just
and ultimately it ended up being, like you said, a plate of shit. In the whole, I think it's a grand scheme of things. But I'm curious because like everyone keeps saying it's much better, and I'm like,
yeah. I mean,
so what does that mean? Does that mean I don't know? I'm
probably
curious.
Have to get more buzz for me to be interested in checking it out. But I would out of principle, if we just wanted to review the first episode for the pod or something.
Yeah.
I will say, so Catherine and we're in the middle of 3 shows. We're in The Bear. We are halfway through Atlanta, Donald Glover's FX show. It's wonderful. We just finished season 2 yesterday. And then we started, I don't know if you've seen the buzz about it. It's really picking up, Shogun on FX.
It's after me and Kim Lee finish, which I was going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is god tier television.
It's such a good rom-com. It's like one of the best rom-com, like
it's so well done,
but done in a way that doesn't just feel like a typical rom-com.
It's just so well written. The characters are so well done.
Their chemistry is so good.
It's crazy, and just the way they do the show is ultimately just a show about them versus being a spy show, which is the right decision in this case.
Absolutely.
And I'm so surprised that Kimberly is loving it because Kimberly loves it, I think, and I love it. I love it too. And so, like my pitch, I'm glad she's loving it because my next thing is like, hey, there's this show called Shogun, and I really want to watch it because I like anything like that, like that kind of culture. And I'm like, and everyone's telling me it's like Game of Thrones
Yeah, that
but
was
samurais.
that was what I was seeing. We've only watched the first episode. It was like an hour and 10 minutes, the first episode, and they've released the first two. I think the next one comes out like Sunday or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. So we're only one episode in. I'm really hungry for episode two because it feels like the show. It's like when you watch Prestige HBO television, and you're like, oh, these guys are taking their time. These guys aren't rushing to like just throw imagery in our faces, or like they aren't trying to rush into like just hooking us on the show and making us keep watching. Like they're telling a really interesting story. What's cool about it too, for me, even versus Game of Thrones, is that this is all based on real history. This is about the first Englishmen to find the Japan Islands, and like it's based in the 1600s. And like so far, there's no kind of mystical element to it. But man, yes, the acting 100% there. There's already been just some like gruesome death type stuff, like, you know what I mean, kind of things happening that remind me of Game of Thrones in that way. Like there's not gore, but kind of gore, you know, just like that kind of stuff. And like it's just the first episode is setting up like a multiple season. It feels like just epic, you know what I mean, of just like warring Japanese clans. And then you've got the English coming in. And what's nice about it is it is a lot in Japanese. There's a lot of subtitles, but there's a lot of English too, because when the English people are around, so like historically they were speaking Portuguese, but they just tell us English. They just, anything that was supposed to be in Portuguese, they just do in English, which is really nice, not to have two different like foreign languages in a show to be like, but yeah, it's great, man. There's a few actors that I recognize, like not a lot.
The main guy, I can't think of his name, but he's in everything, and he's always fucking awesome. He's Scorpion in Mortal Kombat.
Yes, yeah. No, exactly. Kombat. Yes. He's awesome so far in the show.
He's
there's
always
also
great at everything.
Nestor Carbonell. I remember he's a Lost alumni. He was like that guy on Lost that like never aged and was like there always there somewhere, like hanging around. He's unrecognizable. I could barely see him through like the costume and or like the beard he had on. But man, it just there's already.
He has a great interview recently come out with Michael Rosenbaum on Inside of You. It's a great interview. I can't think of his name right now, but like you said his name, but I can't think of Carbonell. I can't think of his Lost name for some reason, but I just watched all of Lost again. But he's hearing his story is pretty awesome. He seems like a really cool guy.
Well, he's playing a really interesting character, like a fun character in the show. It's just, there's already so many characters I'm interested in. There's already so many plot threads I'm starting to be invested in. And like, and you can just see them weaving in between each other, and how complicated and messy this is all going to get, and how bloody it's going to get. I mean, the action's been fantastic. The production design is perfect. I mean, it looks.
That's what I hear.
Amazing.
I purposely, every time I see an ad, I don't look at it because I just don't want to. I don't know why. I just don't want to watch it because I watch other kind of like stuff what we do, and and I think it's based off like an old '80s show that
it's based off a book.
It is based off a book, but like this was already done once, like in the '80s. I think on this, and like that I think that show also is apparently like regarded highly for a lot of people's eyes.
Oh wow!
And so I think it's like there was a high bar for this, and it sounds like everyone's saying it's like perfect, basically. So
yeah, no, it says it's a limited series. So now I'm wondering if it's only going to be.
Yeah, when you said multiple seasons, I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's only like 6-8 episodes.
That's interesting. Period. That's really interesting. I wonder if it does well enough if they would try to turn it into a series. They'd probably have to like deviate from the books, but
probably.
Yeah,
it's getting some buzz. It's getting buzz. I mean, this and Dune in the same like week or two is like.
And this was like it came out of nowhere. I never heard of this show before people started saying it was Game of Thrones levels.
I knew about it like 6 months ago, but like whispers, and then just in the last 3 weeks, it's been like, oh yeah, this is coming out. I'm super jacked for. Like people are like, I'm super jacked for it. Blah 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 blah. Yes. It's fascinating. Daniel, how can listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/2for1mail and let us know what you thought of the Netflix Avatar: The Last Airbender series. Are you more on my side, where it's some way it is a blasphemous interpretation of one of the best things you've ever seen? Or are you a little more easy on it? Are you maybe more on Donovan's side where you see the flaws, but you still, enjoyed yourself and want to keep going? Let us know. bit.ly/241mail. I do hope you at least watch the show in between season 1 and season 2. I hope you could find time, because I think you would really, I know you would love it. I know the kind of things you love, and this is like, it will hit you in the feels exactly like you want it to.
Yeah, I was going to say, ultimately, I'm a masochist, so I think that's why my opinion on of enjoying the show might be dumb, because I don't know, but I think I don't. Again, I say I enjoy it. There was I told Kimberly last night when it literally ended, and she goes, "Did you like it?" And I was like, I said, "Well, I was getting tired of watching it." I was like, it felt like
you.
Yeah, I mean, again, like an episode would go by, I get pulled in, and I get pulled out, and I'd be like, oh, I gotta watch this for the podcast, and that's not a good feeling when you have to watch. I won't be like Stranger Things, where I'm like every night I'm like I have to fucking keep watching this show.
Yes,
I have to binge the next episode. That's what I want, and I did not feel that with this, but there was enough there. I'm curious, and maybe I think the medicine is watching, like you said, the show in between season 1 and 2, and then next season I can come in. Guns blazing on how bad season 2 is.
It's a fast watch, man. I mean, they're 20-minute episodes because it's classic, cartoons with commercials, TV, and so they're really quick. And we probably got through the whole show in a month or two, just because it's you can watch 2 or 3 episodes a night easily. Yeah, you know what I mean. Sometimes, if we're gonna watch 2 hours of Avatar, that's 6 episodes. You know what I mean? That's like a fourth of a season already. So yeah. I hope you do. I think I would love to just talk about the show after you watch it.
Sure.
But I'd love to go into season 2 kind of and get your opinion on season 2 now, having more context.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Well, hey, everyone, if you can't hit us up in our Bitly, you can always find us in the comment section below, youtube.com/241studios. It's the best place to listen to the content. Also, listeners, I also run a channel called The Guyver Geek. Didn't know if you knew that, listeners, but I just interviewed David Hayter, who is the voice of Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid, and he also wrote X-Men 1, X-Men 2, and Watchmen. And he's also done a lot of other things as well. And that interview drops probably the same day as this episode. Oh, wow. So I anticipate the same day. So if you want to hear about filmmaking in that way, and he's also told me that he potentially might be available to be on this show. So we'll see.
We got to find the perfect topic to bring him on for. It's
called X-Men. We're going to talk about X-Men.
I mean, man, fuck, if he would review Deadpool with us, God, that would just be.
I keep thinking I got to get off here, I got to go. But I keep thinking, I wonder if he'd be willing to break down X-Men with me and you and Bruce.
Oh, whoa.
For episode 250. Or for episode 241, maybe.
I'm almost worried that Bruce would hate it and just tear it to shreds and make an immortal enemy or something. Yeah, I mean, that's the one worry is when you review a thing with the creator of a thing, it's hard not to kind of maybe hold back some of your honesty. It would
be different in the fact that I'm not sure we'd be reviewing it. We'd be presenting our findings and asking questions.
Sure.
And again, the David Hayter has the downside of it's everything's once it's done, everything's in hindsight, so to speak.
Yes,
he told me on our interview he did 150 drafts of it.
Of X-Men?
Of X-Men.
Whoa.
And how he got the job, real quick, listeners, he told me, and apparently this is widespread knowledge, I didn't know this, was that he was an assistant to Bryan Singer, and Bryan Singer didn't like the script, and David was a huge comic fan. X-Men comic fan, and Bryan said, well, Dave was like, you should have a scene with Cyclops and Wolverine doing this, and Dave said, Bryan said, we'll go write that, and Dave said, oh, okay. And then the next day, Bryan shows up where's my scene, and Dave was like, I'm working on it, and he had no idea he was actually serious.
Oh, wow.
And so David starts writing scenes, and eventually the studio tells him, there's no way you're going to get credit for this, whatever. I didn't ask him, but it sounded like he had to go to arbitration, which is a process where basically you get other members of the DGA basically sit down with your draft and other drafts, and they see how much you've written, and they determine basically in a court, not in court, but in court, Like, hey,
Well, there's
this-
guidelines, right? Like there's guidelines in WGA. What counts as a revision? What counts as a draft?
exactly.
All
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
And so you're basically, it's determined by your peers, people who've experienced doing this. But essentially, it sounded like they kept telling him he wasn't going to get credit. And by the end of the movie, they end up saying, okay, he has to get sole credit.
because of how much he ended up writing.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And Christopher McQuarrie, he was 26 or 24.
Wow.
And Christopher McQuarrie called him and said, you understand you're like you're the youngest, most successful screenwriter of all time.
Wow.
He's like, and it was just by accident. So anyway.
Wow. That's awesome.
Fun
Cool.
story for you. There's more like that in the interview, and hopefully we get him on ours as well. My name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.